Now, again, Bitcoin is trying to bounce off horizontal support. If it goes lower, you get your 100 period moving average there. You've got your rising trend line going way back there for Bitcoin. Right now, trying to bounce off horizontal support. They breached this trend line right here, overthrowing it, getting some bottoming tails right there. But if we can bounce and get above the apex of the triangle, back above the 50 period moving average, the green line, or if we pull back and we get above these levels, again, you still may attempt to challenge this high. I'll be talking about that in this video. You might form another reference point of a divergence here, or you might form a brand new divergence moving to a new high. Should we attempt to do that? I've talked about a legitimate breakout with Bitcoin or getting a topping tail, moving to a new high and getting a topping tail and an overall topping process. The two scenarios. Again, this is the moment of truth. Is Bitcoin going to get a legitimate breakout? You get above 69,000, you hold above it, and you don't look back. That's extremely bullish. You break above it and get failed attempts to break above it, and you turn back down and you start breaking below the 100 period moving average, you start losing the 60,000 area of support and seeing weekly signals turn bearish like rainbow cloud, then that's bearish and you'll have a failed attempt here, 69,000. To see which one happens, which scenario plays out. Talked about the monthly chart rebounding back up and getting some kind of topping tail or doji or something that looks like one of these candlesticks if we are to top around this area. And again, we still may move to a higher high and end up seeing a divergence form on the weekly chart, the RSI. I'm going to be watching as we move closer towards the end of the month. I'll be watching what the monthly close looks like here with Bitcoin. But just back to the daily chart real fast. Again, Bitcoin follows a 100 period moving average. Again, if we go lower, we still may hit it and try to bounce off of it, or it bounce off 60,000. I'm watching those two levels. And again, if we do, we still may attempt to go to a new high. Got to take out the cloud. You got to take out the 100 period moving average of Bitcoin's going to go lower. When we were going sideways, we were jumping up and down above and below the 100 period. When we got above it, the cloud and the 100 period are support. We're just above those levels right now. If we turn down, we still may hit it and try to bounce, or we may try to bounce off 60,000, 59, 60,000 area and still try to rebound. So I'll be watching, but in order for Bitcoin to turn bearish, you've got to take out the 100 period moving average. You got to take out the cloud here in the daily time frame, and it's currently at this 57,000 area, just under 58,000 or so, right in that area there, near 58,000, just in the high 57,000 range. So even if 60,000, 59, 60,000 breaks, you still have the 100 period right there, which is, again, we bounced off of it previously. I told you we were going to bounce off that level back in January. Now we're hitting horizontal support, so we haven't hit that level yet. We still may do it directly below our recent lows, and if we try to form a divergence here in the most recent price action, you still may see something like that and still try to climb to a new high. So we'll be watching horizontal support and the 100 period moving average. 4-hour chart parameters back to a bullish cross. We got the bounce. Again, I talked about this level of support at great length and detail in my last update, but we're stalling at the 200. We may get a reaction off of that level, but the 50 is now curling back up. So again, if you can clear the 200, you can get into positive territory with pring parameter, you get a bigger rebound. You don't, you get rejection at the 200, you come back, you take out this level, you take out the 100 period in the daily, pring parameter remains negative, that's bearish. You clear these levels, pring parameter goes bullish, then that's a bullish event. Get the 50 though back above the 200, price it back above the 200, and you've got to get the pring parameter back into positive territory if we're going to get a bigger rally. Bullish divergences on the RSI. We had a triple bullish divergence. We came down and hit it again there, and again, that has given us this rebound back up. Can we momentum shift back to bullish? Should we be able to start getting above the 200 and remaining above it? Again, Bitcoin is going sideways. Here, the rainbow cloud is still bearish. Balance of power, we've been going sideways, has remained bearish down here, going back and forth from green to red to green to red. Balance of power, negative, rainbow cloud, negative. We still have The swing trend line negative, but momentum is turning back up. Look at that right there, turning back up to blue with the momentum line. So again, we might get traction off of the 60,000 area or dip down to the 100 period and try to get traction if we form a divergence. But we'll be watching to see what happens. If momentum can flip back to bullish or not, can we get back above that 69,000 area? As Bitcoin's gone sideways, going back and forth from green to red, blue bars, green cloud, red bars, red cloud, back and forth here. And again, Bitcoin's trying to bounce off horizontal support. With today's session, we're trying to get a green bar on the awesome oscillator. If we get green bars and they go back to positive, then again, we might try to break out of the bull flag pattern, getting out of the trading range. You start breaking 60,000, that's bearish. You start breaking out of the bull flag, that's going to be bullish. I'll be talking about both of those support levels, support and resistant levels in this video. We're trying to get a bullish green bar now, bouncing off key horizontal support on Bitcoin. Bitcoin's going to go higher. We got to get a bullish reversal of conditions here. And again, a lot of the momentum signals and trending signals are still bearish, but we are trying to bounce off of key horizontal support. So you got to be able to clear this area, get above here, and come back and go try to clear 69,000 if we're going to get the traction back up, start clearing the moving averages. Bitcoin futures we're looking at right here. Now, again, signals are still bearish. We're still struggling at the 20 period moving average here on the Bitcoin price. You can get back above the 50, get back above the cloud, clear the 69,000 area and start attempting a rebound, getting above the 200 on the 4-hour chart. Then again, we could attempt a rebound. Could be we test this level, the lows, and then do it. Move fails and we start losing this area and dropping lower. You have the 100 period moving average. If we lose that, that's bearish. If you bounce off of that, that is bullish. Right now we're bouncing off of the support zone as I've been talking about. Again, signals are showing we're going sideways. You're going from bullish to bearish to bullish to bearish, from bullish to bearish, and even the moving averages are crisscrossing back and forth. Get back above the moving averages. We start flipping the cloud to green. Seeing momentum turn back up. Momentum right now is bearish. I'm just saying we're bouncing off support. Short-term bullish, but momentum would have to flip for a bigger move higher. But again, since late February, we have been going sideways. Signals are still bearish, and they'll remain bearish if we go down and we start taking out the 100 period and start taking out the 59, 60,000 area. If we get above those levels, we'll turn back to bullish, and then we could challenge the highs. The resistance zone is this peak here, the failed breakout of the triangle, and the peak over here. And the triangle's now evolved into a bull flag pattern, which I'll show you on another chart shortly. Now, Tether, which is stablecoin, again, might be giving us some clues to what's happening. When you look at Tether dominance over the dollar, we're bouncing off of this trend line. Now, look at this trend line. I've talked about this. This is where the tops have been with Bitcoin. And again, it doesn't look like it here, but this was a 71% drop. This was an 84% drop, 55%, 50 or 78%. These were marking all important tops, hitting this trend line. Bitcoin peaked at around this trend line area in an overall topping process each time. Again, sometimes you straddle along this area for a little while, which we did here. We could still be doing. We've come up to overhead resistance right here, and we've turned down. I've talked about this at great length and detail a couple of videos back. I said if Bitcoin tries to make a new high or goes back up to test and get a lower high, we can see this come back down here and then go on its way and try to break out. And if it does, you may get something that looks like this on Bitcoin, where you have this topping process, something like what we had over here and over here with our 2021 tops. And again, we straddled along that area in early 2021 and late 2021. We straddled along that area for a little while, forming a topping process. So it is still very, very possible that that is the case here. And as I've said, if we turn off of this level, again, this could help the bullish case for the short term, and you could bounce off 60,000, 59, 60,000. If you break up through this area, this overhead resistance, then you could be breaking 60,000 and start going lower. But Bitcoin down here, the tethered dominance here in the upper window. And again, it is suggesting that Bitcoin can have some real problems here. Is what we need to see for a bullish case for Bitcoin is to this trend line to break and for Bitcoin to go off to the races. That's bullish. Here, this is bearish. If you're bouncing off of this trend line, it is suggesting maybe another topping process, as all of these others have topped at this trend line right here. I'm short-term bullish because we are bouncing off of Bitcoin. Let me be clear, momentum in many cases is still bearish. A lot of signals are still have sell signals. I'm just short-term bullish because we're bouncing off of support, bouncing off of the weekly support with the rainbow cloud, as I've talked about at great length and detail. So again, I think while we could rise back up and get a lower high or a higher high, you still might get a topping process because of this trend line. So again, if we pull back, you can see we went up to overhead resistance right here, and we stalled out, and we get little topping tails there. So again, could still come down here, hit the trend line, or even get a higher low here above the trend line, or hit the trend line and get a higher low and still form a topping process. So again, Bitcoin takes its time doing what it's going to do. People go, well, it hasn't happened yet, so it's not going to happen. That could apply to both the bulls and the bears. Well, it hasn't gotten a successful close above 69,000, so it's not going to happen. And the bears, well, it hasn't broken below 60,000 yet, so it's not going to happen. Saying Bitcoin takes its time doing what it's going to do. But again, right here, this is suggesting a possible topping process here. Unless we break this trend line, you break that trend line, then that's going to be bullish. You hold above 69,000, that's bullish. But again, this could be suggesting an overall topping process, move towards the Fed meeting. We have fewer cuts being anticipated. Fed fund futures, again, Bitcoin in the stock market, priced in up to 7 cuts. The betting markets have that now down to 1 or none in 2024. We have the Bitcoin halving. A lot of people are expecting that the push up through 69,000 will carry us to the 100,000 area, and we're the Bitcoin halving. This is, going to be bullish for Bitcoin. Bitcoin follows the economic cycle. Not so much the halving, but the economic cycle. So it's really going to be watching what's going to happen regarding recession and the rate cuts and so forth, because the rate cuts are going to happen because recession is coming. Now the inflation data is high, so again, there could be reset with the market and with Bitcoin. But again, this could buy Bitcoin more time right here if we see a pullback off of this overhead resistance area, and it could allow Bitcoin to go even higher before turning. It's going to get a bullish breakout in a new bull market. We got to come down and break that trend line right there. Right now, we're not doing that. Now, as I'm making the video in the Monday session for Bitcoin, it's currently up just over 1.5%, coming up and testing the 20-period moving average. That is the blue line you see right there. Now, back here we had a failed breakout of a triangle, and I told you that again, you're watching to see which way the triangle would break. It ended up breaking to the downside and breaking this trend line right here. And then what happened is we came back to support, and I told you to be watching support in the last several updates. Again, either we're going to find buyers coming in at the support zone here, which is that low there and that low there, at this 60,000, 59,000 range or so. 60,000 is a key psychological level of support, and we came down, tried to break below this low, and we could not close below it. And we saw the support zone hold. Buyers came back in. As I said, I think the Middle East tensions gave Bitcoin a short-term bottom. It's forming or evolving really from a triangle pattern with a failed breakout. The failed breakout is now the upper boundary of a potential bull flag with a bounce off of the support zone, marking a potential lower boundary for the bull flag. Again, Bitcoin's going to get a legitimate breakout and go above 69,000 and remain above it and never look back. So far, that hasn't been the case. It broke above 69,000. That's this dotted red line right here. Broke above it, failed. Broke above it, failed. Broke above it, failed. Now this pattern still can give us a higher high with Bitcoin that will either be a legitimate breakout or a topping process. Real problems being a legitimate breakout based on the dollar breaking out, based on other things that I've talked about. I'll show you again in this video a few other things I'm looking at. We're in this sideways trading range of moving averages of 10 and 20 crisscrossing back and forth. Now they've dropped below the 50. And again, if we can get back above the 10 and 20, we're above the 10, but we're stalling at the 20. Probably going to see a pullback and then eventually a test of 69,000 again in all likelihood. Now, I don't know if we test these lows again here, but again, as I've said, again, we had the drop here, we had the drop here. Watching this 59, 60,000 area very carefully to see we would bounce or if we would break. We are bouncing, that's bullish. So again, we're either going to get a legitimate breakout and a new bull market, or we're going to get a larger topping process, maybe a lower high, but you still have a very high probability that we could try to challenge the peak over here and have the bull flag give us a breakout that gives us a blow off top, a final peak, peaks out somewhere just above this area here. And maybe get like a topping tail as we've seen at the 2021 tops. So again, as Bitcoin takes its time doing what it's going to do, either getting a legitimate breakout or leading a topping process, people become impatient and end up losing hope. The bulls losing hope. Well, we've had 3 breakouts, so it's not going to happen. We'll start losing hope. And the bears, oh, it hasn't broken down, so it's not going to happen. And again, we're just going sideways. We've been going sideways here actually since late February, and I said early March last time, but it's actually late February that we have been going sideways on Bitcoin. So about 8 or 9 weeks or so now, something like that. You do now have a bull flag pattern that, again, could attempt to break out. And if we do break this trend line right here and break out above this level, clearing 69,000, then again, you're either going to try to move into a new bull market, which again, got to clear 69,000, stay above it as we've had at other peaks, clearing the peak and going in on and looking back. Hasn't happened here. We've had 3 failed attempts to clear 69,000. Again, momentum signals still mostly bearish, but again, my guess is that we're going to try to bounce right here. So again, coins dropped 19%. I closed my short position. I went long here at the 60,000 area, start dropping below it, get stopped out, and I'll flip back to a short position if we can get a bigger rally to test the resistance zone, which is this high and this high, and try to break out. Then I'll stick with it and just short-term swing trades because we're going sideways. Momentum signals are still bearish right now, but I'm short-term bullish because we are bouncing off of support in the weekly time frame. Just because I'm short-term bullish, that doesn't mean that things have changed. I still think Bitcoin has to get above 69,000 and stay above it without dropping back below it in order to have a bull market. And I think there's a strong possibility of a topping process here, as I've said, but we are going sideways. So I'm just playing short-term swing moves. Rally up, I'll likely sell my long, flip back to a short position. If we move to new highs, start getting warning signs again, or can't make new highs and start getting warning signs again. So again, going sideways, trading bulls and bears alike. This is a trading range. Down here are the buyers. The buyers are coming in down at this level. The buyers. The sellers are up here. The sellers are up in this range. The sellers over here, the sellers here, the sellers here. We're in a sideways trading range. I closed my short position and went long is because we're going sideways. We're going to have a breakout one way or the other. Either break down. If we start doing that, great. Stopped out of my long position, I'll go back to short. We get a break to the upside, then I'll ride the long up, and then I'll flip back to short. That's my trading strategy because we're going sideways. Picking up what I'm throwing down. We are in a topping process. We could still go and make a new all-time high. Talked about this at great length and detail. Or, again, we can get a legitimate breakout, which, again, I think is less likely. We're in a new bull market based on some of the things that I'm seeing. Told you I was watching that 60,000, 59,000 range very closely because that's where the rainbow cloud is, right there. And again, we went down, hit that level, and rebounded. I was watching. Do we break it? That's bearish. Do we bounce? That's bullish. I talked about this at great length and detail. The rainbow cloud has been acting as support all the way up. If we break it, that's going to be bearish. If we bounce off of it, that's going to be bullish. That doesn't mean that it's in a new bull market and that's been decided. It just means that we're bouncing off support, going sideways. And again, could be that we get still something like this, which I think is highly probable. We're bouncing off support. Shorts were up here, the longs are down here, the bears here, the bulls are here, in a sideways trading range, playing the swings back and forth. I still think we can go higher. If the bull flag plays out, get a topping tail, move it to a new high, then complete a topping process. Talked about the 69,000 area at great length and detail. Again, you have to be able to clear it and stay above it. We have not been able to do that. We've had 3 failed attempts. Still may attempt a 4th. And again, if we do, you may try to clear this level and get a divergence on the RSIs. I've been talking about now, up this consolidation now for weeks. I've been talking about that possibility. But here, again, it could look something like what we had over here, where, again, you get a topping tail, you sell off, and you consolidate, and you hang around these highs. You go up and you make another attempt at it. You go a little higher, you get a topping tail. This time it produced a reversal. Same thing over here. You get a peak, you sell off, and you just kind of consolidate for many, many weeks around here. Here it was about 3 weeks later we peaked. Here it was about 5 weeks later or so. Made a new high, got a topping tail there, and that was the end of it. We dropped 55%, 52% over here. If we get a legitimate breakout, you've got to be able to stay above 69,000 and not drop back below it. So again, I think you've got the possibility of a bull flag. I think that if we can rally this week, the S&P can rally back up and NASDAQ can rally back up and fill their gaps there. S&P can rally back up to 5,200, and if it does, then Bitcoin could rally up and get something that looks like this, or even come up to this trend line and have a failed breakout, or again a legitimate breakout. The problem with the legitimate breakout, that recession is coming. The stock market and Bitcoin will price that in, and eventually we'll get a Fed pivot. Now that's been pushed to the back burner here. Bitcoin and the stock market have priced in 7 cuts. Now it's hovering between 1 and none. Is going to be a readjustment in all likelihood with Bitcoin, the stock market, on hopes of aggressive cuts. And again, the herd believes that the cuts are bullish. They're actually bearish and will usher in a bear market for the stock market. And if that happens, then again, which I believe the stock market is a topping process, but I think it'll try to bottom out here. It bottoms out around the 20-week moving average, by the way. That would help Bitcoin try to rally back up to try to make a new all-time high and maybe get something that looks like that, or maybe up here, but come up here above this high just a bit, like we did over here, and get some kind of topping tail, some kind of top or something. We get a reversal at this area. And again, because Bitcoin takes its time doing what it's going to do, then people go, oh, it didn't happen yet, so it's not going to happen. There's still real risk of a reversal here, as I've said. But again, we are going sideways, and we've been going sideways for weeks now since we pushed up here to try to challenge 69,000. We've been in this trading range here for several weeks. Could see a topping process that looks, again, something similar to this, or something similar to this. This was a little bit bigger over here, but something that looks like that. And still have the rally end up failing. What would be bullish is to get above 69,000, stay above it, and not drop back below it. Because I've said, and here again is the weekly chart of Bitcoin, as I've said, when we've broken out above the previous peaks, a bear market or a bearish phase, again, it's off to the races and you don't look back. Off to the races and you don't look back. Here we go higher. Here we pull back a little bit and then we took off, stalled at that level, but off to the races. Here, again, breaking above the high here in the new bull market and above the previous bear market high, again higher. But here we failed, as I've talked about. Do we get another failure like that and form a triple top pattern, and we end up getting a big sell-off, rejection around the 69,000 area, or do we get a breakout, a legitimate breakout, and get something like this, this, or this, or this? Is it going to be breakout or fake out? Historically, when we've broken up above these levels, it has moved to new highs. Here you had a fake out right here, and could we see the same? And if you do, there's a possibility of a very large corrective pattern, as I've talked about. If we did complete a 5-leg push higher here, you could have a very, very large correction that is an expanded flat where you get a sell-off, a bottom, you rebound, and you go slightly above this high, and then you come back and you move slightly below this low right here. And that is a very large expanded flat with Elliott wave. If we end up getting a topping process here, bullish count would be that we get a breakout and you move above 69,000 and never look back again. But so far that has not been the case. We have struggled with 3 failed attempts to break above 69,000. The other thing I want to mention is the 9-count sell signal in the weekly time frame. I've talked about this at great length and detail. Let me just bring this up closer so you can see this. Again, we had a 9-count complete, but it was not a perfected signal. Okay? The 6-bar is the high of the count. As I've talked about at great length and detail, we may end up moving above that high at the 73,000, just under 73,800. Perfect this count. We might see a move up here, come up and perfect the count, closing above bar 6, but then still have the move end up failing. We might do that this week. We might do it next week surrounding the Fed. We might see something like that happen and still form an overall topping process around this 69,000 area. So again, pushing above 69,000, clearing 73,800 and holding above those levels, well, that's bullish if you can stay above them. But if you get above them and it fails, then that's going to be bearish. Okay, or if we do it next week with the Fed, if we do something like that, I think there's a strong possibility the S&P rallies back up and about 5% to 5,200 or maybe more than that, and it tries to make a new all-time high, bouncing off the 20-week moving average, forming a divergence. If it does, Bitcoin can move to a new high. And again, we could not break the support zone, the support zone here. We could not break below it. You can't bust them down. You could try to bust them back up. Here we are. We've been going sideways. Include this bar in the trading range. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 weeks now. We have been going sideways in this trading range. So again, you're now forming a bull flag. You're bouncing off support. You may test this low again, but if it can hold, this 59, 60,000 level can hold, you still might try to get a perfected sell signal moving above the 6-bar, because the 8-bar or the 9-bar have to be the high of the count for it to be a perfected signal. Or not. Still may get it, and then still have the move fail, can't hold above 69,000. I said, if we can't make new highs and we get a break below the 60,000 area, then you'll have a lower high and a lower low, and then you could start a reversal. This would be bearish. A break above the 69,000 area would be bullish, and if you clear this level, that would be bullish right here. Break the downward trend that I talked about earlier in the daily time frame. Again, that would be short-term bullish. The move could still fail. We are likely going to challenge the recent highs if the S&P and NASDAQ can try to rally. Right now, the S&P 500 is testing its 20-week moving average. It has sold off about 6% from the highs. We have a channel. It could historically bounce here and get a lower high like we did over here, or get a higher high like we did at the January 2022 top, or back over here in 2020. If it bounces, Bitcoin could try to move to a new high or test the highs. But if S&P moves to a new high up here towards 5,300 to hit the trend line, form a divergence here, then again, Bitcoin very well could do the same. Now, keep in mind, when S&P did that in 2022, NASDAQ made a lower high. So again, bouncing up the 60,000 area on Bitcoin, I told you it could get a lower high or it can get a higher high in an overall topping process. Over here, when the S&P moved to a new high, NASDAQ and Bitcoin got lower highs. That doesn't mean that has to happen this way this time. Looking for a rebound on the S&P 500. Should we try to bounce off our 20-week moving average? We may dip a little bit back below it. We're doing it, but I'm going to be watching. Do we get traction off of that 20-week moving average do that could help Bitcoin. Bitcoin got another bottoming tail here, and again off of the 60,000 level of support. And it's kind of the same thing going on with the Nasdaq. Again, you've got the retail investors when it dips, well, they're buying, okay, and we've seen these bottoming tails. We rally, seeing the big money begin to sell into the rally, and that's why we've had the sell-offs. One attempt to rally, two attempts, three attempts have now failed. So again, battle between the bulls and the bears. So we'll see if we can try to go to a new high or not. And if we do, we'll get a perfected 9-count sell signal with a push above this previous peak at the 73, just below 73,800.